Good morning, YouTube, BookTube. This is Johnny. I thought I'd make a video this morning. It is February the 12th, 2019. It is 7:37 here in Western Michigan, Southwest Michigan. And yeah, it's been 24 hours since I made a video, and it is like 7:38 in the morning, and my wife was supposed to be flying out of Grand Rapids this morning, but to visit our son Josiah and his wife Hannah, our little granddaughter Rico Rose. They're in Mercer Island in Washington, state of Washington, which is right, in the Seattle area. But due to the bad weather in Washington, she canceled her trip. So a nurse that she works with, his grandmother had a stroke and was dying, and he had to fly to Texas. So my wife, and they had to pick up these shifts. So my wife is now working, and I drove her to work last night due to the bad weather and picking her up this morning. So she'll call me around around 8:40 she'll call. So I thought, since I got this time and it's quiet, that I would make a little video. I didn't do a Monday Reads. I did volunteer at the Book Nook yesterday, and I won't go into that. I'm just going to focus on one thing. I thought I could do all kinds of things, do a Monday Reads and talk about what I've been reading and all kinds of stuff, but I'm just going to do something that's been going around in BookTube, and I don't do tags because well, a lot of the questions I could never answer. I don't have an answer for, and I don't because I just don't. But I saw this one tag that's been going around that what interested me about it, that somebody, when I looked at the tag, I was watching a video of one of these booktubers, and she lives in Puerto Rico, and she answered the questions looking at the literature and poetry of Puerto Rico. And it got me thinking that these questions, the 52 nifty bookish questions, if you gave them to somebody like in Japan, or somebody in South Africa, or somebody in Russia, or somebody who was living in some village, a fishing town or village in the Arctic, how would they answer these questions? Because they assume a certain kind of literary knowledge, or that's Western European, white. So I was kind of thinking about that. Plus, you could answer all these questions as a Christian different from somebody who was, I am knowledge,able of Christian literature, Christian poetry, Christian fiction, Christian non-fiction books, etc. So you could answer these questions from a Christian perspective. But what I did is I pasted these questions into my online blog, Crooked Fingers, and then yesterday I went through them and answered them, and I thought I would just share my answers this morning to make a long thing here. So the 52 nifty bookish questions. Number 1, what book are you reading right now? And I wrote, I am right now reading several books, too many to mention. But one of the things I was writing in my diary this morning, I'm on page 125, and I wrote, what was the last book I read before I went to bed last night? And I read The Pleasures of the Imagination, English Culture, 18th Century by John Brewer. So this is the last book I read before I went to bed last night. Question 2, what was the last thing you highlighted? I do not highlight the books I'm reading or own. Question 3, what do you plan to read next? I don't know what I'll plan to read next. I don't really know. I don't know. I got a pile of books on my to-be-read pile over there in the living room table, but I don't know. Usually what that means to me is what I'm going to read this morning or this afternoon, and I'm not really sure. Question 4, what fiction writer, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink? Well, I don't drink. I drink once in a while, but I'm not really into drinking. But I would like to have the writer John O'Hare. John O'Hare is one of my favorite American writers. So John O'Hare, I don't know if he would have a drink with me, but I would like to just tell him I appreciate I like your books, your novels, short stories. Question 5, one nonfiction writer, living or dead, with which you would like to grab a drink. And I was reading that book I've been showing, the 9th Street Women, on the abstract expressionist painters, and it was written by Mary Gabriel, and I suppose I'd like to just talk to her more about the abstract expressionist art movement there in New York City that she wrote about. Question 6, one poet, living or dead, with which you like to grab a drink, and I put Frank O'Hare. I think it was Frank O'Hare. I was going to he was a New York poet, and I meant to make sure I got the right name. But Frank O'Hare, I would like to, because he knew Jackson Pollock, he knew Kerouac and Ginsberg, and he was in that whole poetry scene in New York there in the 50s and 60s. 7, one booktuber which you would like to grab a drink, and I taught Todd the Librarian, sit down and have a drink with him. Todd the Librarian. 8, Emily Dickinson or Edgar Poe, and I put somebody at the same 19th century writer or poet, and I put Ralph Waldo Emerson. I would rather, that's who I would choose, Ralph Waldo Emerson. 9, Hemingway or Fitzgerald. I would, somebody the same time period, I'd put Thomas Wolfe, Look Homeward Angels. 10, Jane Austen or Charles Dickens. I put Anthony Trollope. 11, Harris or Hitchens. I don't really know who these people are, so I put neither. 12, Stephen King or Michael Crichton. Never read these. I don't have any desire to read any of those two guys. 13, Brent East-Ells or Chuck Pollock. I have not read their books, but I have collected their writings. I have 4 or 5 novels by Brent Easton Ellis, and I have 5 or 6 Chuck Pollock, but I haven't read them. 14, Kurt Vonnegut or John Green. I never read John Green. I've seen his books, but I have read Kurt Vonnegut, so Kurt Vonnegut. 15, Shakespeare's poems or plays. Neither. I've never been really interested in Shakespeare. I collect books on Shakespeare. I have his writings, his poems, but I never got around to reading Shakespeare or his poems or plays. 16, Adrian Ford or Dalton Gentry on Stripcover Lit. Neither. 17, Cormac McCarthy or J.K. Rowling's. I've seen J.K. Rowling's at the Book Nook, the library used bookstore, but I've never read her. But I have read Cormac McCarthy. I read The Blood Meridian by him. 18, Hannibal Lecter or Voldemort. I've heard of Hannibal Lecter in the movie Silence of the Lamb, but I don't know who Voldemort is, so I put neither. Question 19, D.C. Boyle or George Sanders. D.C. Boyle is one of my favorite writers, and so I put D.C. Boyle. I've read 3 or 4 of his novels, and I have pre-ordered his newest novel coming out on historical fiction on Timothy Leary. Coming out, so T.C. Boyle, question 19. Question 20, good writing or good story. I like good writing. I like good prose. Question 20, YA or children's lit. I don't know. I never read neither of those. Irony or humor. I don't know. I'm not really into humor. And I don't know exactly what irony is. So question 23, sci-fi or horror. I do not know. I mean, I don't really read sci-fi or horror. Now, I suppose I have read a little bit, but not much, so I don't really know. Question 24, fantasy or nonfiction. I like nonfiction. I like biography. I like memoirs, letters, American history. I like art history. I like Christian books, commentaries, biblical studies, things like that. Question 25, rather find a new favorite contemporary writer or a new favorite old-time great. That question kind of puzzled me, the way it's worded, but I like finding new writers. I'm always looking for new writers. Sonnet or haiku, I don't know. I'm not into. I do have a little volume of Jack Kerouac's haikus, and I do have some poetry by Jack Kerouac. But question 27, siesta or vanilla, I don't know what that is. Question 28, spending the evening at a library or bookstore. I like bookstores, used bookstores especially. So I would spend more, if I had a whole evening, and it was a big giant used bookstore, yeah. Magazine or Wikipedia, I like magazines like The Atlantic, The New Yorker, The Believer. I like music magazines. I used to collect them, Spin, Rolling Stones. So I like magazines. Question 30, dictionary or encyclopedia. I like dictionaries. I have slews of dictionaries all over the house. Question 31, the writer I would like to write my biography. You know, I really thought about that because I was looking at my life, and my life has been pretty simple. So if I was to think of a writer, I would think of Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton, I would think, writing my life. So question 32, I do and do not highlight my books. I do not highlight my books. Question 33, I do or do not write in my books. I don't write in my books. I don't annotate. I do take notes in my diary. When I'm reading a book, I always have my diary in front of me. So I write down things, usually little phrases or quotes I'll write in my diary, but I don't write in my books. Question 34, earliest memory of a library. Well, I wrote here, I do not have any memories of libraries, but what I do have a memory of is when I was a kid, there used to be bookmobiles that would go in your neighborhood. And I remember bookmobiles, and I remember a little bit elementary libraries, but I think when I was like 16, 17, 18, I was living in Richmond, California, the Bay Area, and I would go to the Richmond Public Library all the time. That was the main library in Richmond, California, and That was probably a big library, because in those days I didn't, when I was in high school, that was the library I went to, Richmond Public Library. Last time you went to the library, well, yesterday I went to the library because I volunteer at the library used bookstore, the Book Nook. I go to the library twice a week, sometimes more. It's called the Hedrick District Public Library. It's the main library in this Ottawa County. Question 36, have you ever stolen or accidentally stolen books from the library? No. 37, ballpark, how many books do you own? Well, we own, I think, around 12,000 books. I cataloged 10,500. I know my wife has at least 1,000, and I know that there's at least 1,000 I haven't cataloged. I've only been cataloging books that I have been buying the last 10 years at used book sales in thrift stores in some of our Christian library. So I say around 12,000 books. Question 38, how many books do you think would make a reasonable personal library? I think 30,000 books is a good personal library. 30,000, I think. 39, so there's Sense and Sensibilities and Sea Monsters, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. How do you feel about the phenomenon? I don't have any opinion on that. Question 40, horror trope you would like to see get more love. I have no opinion on that. Question 41, something that you think gets underutilized in sci-fi. I don't read sci-fi, so I have no idea. 42, question 42, flash fiction, format of literature, or just a short story dummy. I have no opinion. I like short stories. For years I never read short stories, but I've been reading them and I've enjoyed short stories. Question 43, if you could own one book from all of history, what would it be? The Bible. 44, audio books, the same as reading. I don't know. I can't listen to audio books. Now, I do have Jack Kerouac's On the Road on audio, and I have a book being read by Gord Vidal. I like certain voices, but I can't listen to audio books. Question 45, I also have Tom Wolfe on audio when reading one of his books. Just certain, but I don't listen to audiobooks. Question 45, most literary songwriter of your lifetime. I put down 3, Bob Dylan, Joe Jackson, and Nick Cave. Question 46, what writer embarrasses you the most because you haven't read them? I don't know. I thought of William Faulkner. I haven't read Hemingway, but I don't feel embarrassed about that. You can't read everything. Like, I've read most of my life since I've been a Christian for almost 50 years. Most of my reading has been Christian, not secular. So, question 47, what writer embarrasses you because you haven't read too much from them? None. What biography you are looking forward to reading? Well, I put down 9th Street Women, Lee Krasner, Elaine de Kooning, Grace Harton, Joan Mitchell, and Helen Frankfire, 5 Painters and the Movement That Changed Modern Art. That's what I'm reading right now by Mary Gabriel. Question 49, do you have a dream reading cubby? No, I don't. 50, last literary phenomena that you really got your gears grinding. I don't have any. I can't think of anything. Question 51, what was the last piece of literature that changed the way you read? I couldn't think of anything. Question 42, what booktuber have you been watching the most recently? Well, there is a new booktuber and he hasn't had that many videos, but that's Andrew B. And I hope he keeps making videos. I really enjoyed his videos, Andrew B. And I'll put down below his booktube site. So that is the answers to my 52 nifty bookish questions. So yeah, today is a Tuesday. It is February the 12th. I don't know what I'm going to do today. It's bad weather. It's snowing. It's raining. It's ice. I'll pick my wife up. She'll sleep all day, and I'll just drift through the day. I don't know what I'm going to read this morning. Drink some coffee, write in my diary, watch the birds, seek the Lord. So I hope you have a good week. I hope you had a good weekend. And until next time, bye.